Hi, I'm Lynn Mann presenting to you Microsoft Word 2013, Creating Fillable Forms. Forms are incredibly useful when we need to collect information from someone like a job applicant, a club member, an employee, or other user. Using Microsoft Word, we can create forms for our users to complete in either a printed hard copy version or an electronic version. Although I'm using Word 2013 today, these methods will also work seamlessly for Microsoft Word 2010 and 2007. From planning and design to creating and protecting, I'll show you how to build simple professional-looking forms. When planning and designing a form, there are a few initial questions to ask ourselves. What information should be collected from the user? Usually, the purpose of the form will dictate what information needs to be gathered. For example, if this is a job application, then we should have areas for personal contact information, job history, education, references, maybe special skill set. If this form is for a club membership, then we should include areas for, again, personal contact information, but this time maybe something like chapter location, committees they'd like to serve on. Sharing information on a form isn't always a one-way street. A form can also give information to the applicant, such as membership dues and requirements, terms and conditions, our company's mission statement, so on and so forth. When designing the form, it might sound simple and obvious, but we need to try to keep like information together. If we're requesting their name, address, and phone number, that should be all in one location on the form. And maybe if we have a particular heading like personal information, that might make it clear as to what we're asking for. We should keep in mind how is the form going to be distributed, if it is in print or electronic. When the form is going to be filled out electronically, there are a few extra items to consider. 1. We should keep in mind how the tab key behaves. Where is the cursor going to go next? How is the structure of the form going to be affected when the users key in the data? We also need to know if we're using a table format, will our cells resize when the data is longer than our cell? And should we use a password to protect the structure of the document so that this document doesn't change when the user keys in their data? A couple of different ways of building forms is using either an inline method or utilizing Word's table capabilities. For the inline form, it's very simple. You type in a label and then type a line to signify where the applicant is to fill in the form. You can even add a square to signify a checkbox. This method is perfect for a printed version of the form that the applicant is going to fill out by hand. For the table-based form, it gives us a little bit more capabilities, as in we can color the background of the cell so it stands out and divides our form up very nicely. We can also resize each of the cells to fit our data that we need to fill in. Both of these forms, as they're built currently, I would not recommend for an electronic version. If you are going to distribute electronically, then instead of just typed lines or just empty boxes, you would want to utilize Word's content controls. Whichever method you use, either a printed version, electronic version, inline method, or table-based form, you should include clear directions so that the user knows how to complete the form. Microsoft Word 2013 allows us to build an inline form fairly simply. Inline forms basically have a label and then a line signifying where the user is going to fill in information. We need to be aware that if this is not going to be a printed document to fill out and it's going to be an electronic document, there are some downsides to these methods. One is the user's input will affect the form because of the style that we're going to use. So I don't recommend this for an online or electronic version of a form, but I do recommend it for a very quick and easy way to build a form for a printed version. Let's utilize Word's features to build an inline form for printing. I'm not starting with a blank document. I'm starting with a document with some language already on the page, and now I'll turn it into a form. Most people building an inline form we'll use underscores or turn on the underline and add spaces to create a line, so the person filling out the form understands where to add information. This is a pretty quick and easy way to add lines to the document to signify where to add information. This method works fine for printed forms, but if the form is going to be electronically distributed, this is not the method to use. Why, you might ask? Well, underscores and spaces are characters, and therefore when a person begins typing their information on the underscore or underlined space, it will insert the text and move the other characters to make room. This is what I mean. So for the first name, I want to construct a line, so all I'm going to do is shift and the hyphen, which is the underline, and I'll make a long enough line. Then maybe tab over to give some room for the middle name, add a colon, maybe some spaces, and again another underline. So I'm just using the underscore to build my lines right now. And then last name, again some underline, underscore to do my line. Here's the problem. If this form is done and I give it to somebody in electronic file to fill out the form, they're going to click on the line for first name and they're going to type their name. But here's what happens. The text starts moving over and the whole line is disrupted. That's because if I turn on the all characters, you'll see that these underscores are actual characters. Likewise, I'm going to turn off the all characters. Let's say our line is not the underscore, but I'm going to turn on the underline feature and just add some spaces. That too creates a line that a person can fill out. But again, here's the problem. When I turn on the all characters, you'll see these are actual characters. So when somebody goes to type their name on that line, although it's nicely underlined, it moves everything else on the line over. So it's not the best to use for an electronic form, but if you're going to print out this form, this manner is just fine. This method is just fine. I'm going to remove the data that I inserted, and I'm going to clean up the line, and here it is, nationality. And I could add another line, but instead I am going to add a tab. So this tab, let me turn on the all characters, you can see that there's a tab right here. That's perfect. And another tab, but perhaps this tab, this front leader tab, I want it to stop at 3 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and put a tab stop there. Another way of creating a line, which I prefer, is to use the tab stops. This way we can verify exactly where to stop our line, start our line, so on and so forth, and we have better alignment of our document. So I want to turn on the all characters so you can see I do have a few tabs in here. Now right now after nationality I have 2 tabs, but I really don't need 2 tabs. I just need 1 tab. I'm going to highlight the tab marker, go up to paragraph, click on tabs, and I want my tab stop, let's say, to go to 2.5. So 2.5, and I want it to have the leader of an underscore. And then I have a choice if I can either do dots or dashes, but again, I want a line, so it will be the underscore, and I want to set it. And I click on OK. So this makes a very nice straight line. Now if I go up to the first name and remove some of this line that I created, here's my tab stop, here's my tab once again, and I can easily say, oh, I want it at 2.5, that way it aligns up with the line underneath it. Set it to align and set. Say OK. Now you see it lines up very, very nicely. I can select another tab, go up to paragraphs, and this time set this tab marker to 5, have it a leader, and set the tab stop and say OK. Again, for middle name, if I wanted it to line up with passport, I can do the same thing using tabs. This makes it really nice to line up easily. I'm going to turn off the all characters, and I want to add a place where date of birth, but I want it in such a way where I have slashes. So I could put a line, but that doesn't really indicate to the person on how to fill this out. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and use a simple underscore, and then a forward slash, and then maybe a few lines of underscore again, and a few slash. And then I'm going to ask them, by adding this parentheses, it's going to be day, day, month, month, year, year, and that will inform the user how to fill out that date. If I wanted a few little spaces in between, I can do that as well, just space it out a little bit. I'm going to continue doing the lines and underscores the same way. So I'm going to add a line for company name, title, occupation, street, city, state, zip code, telephone, fax, and email. But I want these to line up. The street, telephone, city, fax, state, and email. I want them to line up, so I am going to use tab stops. Company name, title, and occupation, I'm just going to quickly add some underscored lines to move things around. This is the fastest way to build an underline. That looks pretty good. And then the street, I'm going to give it a few spots. I do want to turn on the all characters, see what I have here. I do have 2 tabs. I can get rid of one. Here's one tab. Again, paragraph marker. And I notice I have, instead of a new line, I just have a line break. So if I use a line break, it's going to take all of this and space it out in terms of using tabs. So let me show you what I mean by that. If I set this first tab to have a tab stop at, let's say, 3 inches maybe, I say OK, it's going to take all of these. Why? Because of this new line break versus paragraph marker. That's fine. I can utilize this if I want. So here's the first one. And did I set it as a... Oh, I need to reset it to have the leader of a line. And I set. Say OK. And that's going to grab everything, which is kind of cool. Let's try city. And this tab stop, I'm going to set the tab stop, this time at, let's say, 4.25 inches. The leader again set. I say OK. I don't need this tab underneath it. So fax lines up really nicely. State, I'm going to push over just a wee bit. Grab this first paragraph marker, or this tab set, and I'm going to now set it at, let's say, 5.5. I'm just kind of guessing right now on where I want these. And that looks okay. I'm going to have to fix that first line, maybe remove one of these tabs that I don't need. Or, better still, I'll fix that in a minute. And then last but not least, the zip code. Let's end the zip code at 6.5. Again, the leader to be a line, and say OK. Now it looks like these 2 lines are lining up pretty well, but I have an extra space in there that I don't need for the fax. And I want a little bit of spacing between the line and the space. So now what I'm going to do is, now that I have the base lines in there, I'm going to change up some little items here to fix what I have. So let me turn off the all characters to show you what I have. And I want to clean it up a bit. So the first thing is I'm going to take this new line out of there and create a paragraph marker at the end of each of these lines. I want to tighten up my paragraph spacing, so after is going to be 0, before is going to be 0. That tightens it up a bit. And I want a little bit of space after that last one, so I'll go ahead and add 10 points back to that last one. It's just cleaning it up to make it look nice. My title doesn't have to be that long, so on this line, since I unconnected each of these lines, I can now manipulate these lines separately. So I'm going to go to the first tab stop, and this one currently is at 3.5, so maybe I do 4.5. So highlight it, go back to our paragraph, go back to tab. I want 4.25 because it is a name of a company, maybe it's long. And I set, and I remove that one right there. Sometimes Word's pretty fastidious about these tab sets. There we go. We had an extra tab in there. That looks much, much better. Just playing around with the tab just right now to make it look a little bit better. Okay, this tab stop's a little long, so we're going to get rid of it. I'm going to create a new tab, go up to paragraph. Sometimes this happens. I'm going to clear and say OK. And it's doing the whole line, so I'm going to go ahead and say clear again. Just kind of start over again. Clear and clear on this line. So these are going to be regular tabs. Now I can resize it. And let's say I want it at 3. Set. There we go. Much better. Things are lining up a little bit. So down here I want to add a checkbox in front of office or residence for the preferred mailing address. Checkboxes are just boxes. So there are a couple ways that I can add this in. One is to insert a symbol of a square. So insert symbol, and on the more symbols, all I need to do is find a box. There's a nice box. And I say close. I'm going to create a little bit of space, and it's a little small. It's just font at this point, so I can change the font size, making it a little bit larger. And now that it's font, I can just do a Control-C for copy, go in front of residence, and hit space, and do the same thing for mail, phone, and email. This way they're all the same size and they look nice. Right here in front of yes, we probably want a checkbox, and in front of no, we need a checkbox. And is it an apartment? Check an apartment. Or a house? Check that house. Is it rented? Or do you own it? So these are all little check boxes that we can add just by adding a symbol. There are a few more lines that I want to add into the document, but there are also a few yes or no questions. So right here where it says, is it built of bricks or stone? I also want it, will you use your home as an office? Have you ever used any personal property? All of these are going to be yes or no. Since we have the layout pretty nice here, I'm just going to copy and paste. This is the best part of Word, is just copying and pasting and then kind of manipulating it a little bit for it to line up properly. So it looks like I need one more tab to line it up. And this one's a little long in the tooth, but it's on the next page, so no worries. We're going to line that up. We can also change some of the spacing of these lines, but just by highlighting it, removing maybe some spacing before. Right now it's at 5 point. Let's do, and maybe after. Reduce the after as well. That just tightens it up a bit. And now I see, since it's on the same page, let's just line it up. Let me see what else is in there. So there's some extra spacing. That's the great thing about that all characters. It can show me what's going on with my document. So I can line things up pretty nicely. So let me turn off the all characters and take a peek at our document. So very simply and easily, besides my lines for my home address, I've created a form. And again, there might be some touch details that I want to straighten out here, like adding a few more so the passport number and maybe the middle name line up a little bit better, just so it looks nice and neat. Maybe have the date of birth up here. So this is what I would do to build an inline form, is just to kind of now play around with how it looks. Maybe adding a little bit of spacing in between the headers, so it spaces it out a little bit. Maybe I want to add some check boxes up here on the top, so I'm going to use what I have on my form already. So go right up here, before Mr., before Mrs., and before Ms., and space them out with a couple of tabs. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and add these lines for my home address really quick. Okay, I finished adding the lines for the home address and the additional contact person. So in short, this is an easy way to add lines by using either underscores or spaces, or using tab leaders to create lines, and then using a symbol of a box for a checkbox. This is a perfect way of designing an inline form for a print view. Let's review what we've done. We built an inline form with simple design, and it's easy to execute using underscores, underline, and also tab leaders. This format is very useful with printed forms, but there are some warnings if you're going to use them for electronic forms.